My son Josh asked me to make a little video about my stuffed toys. Well, I'm going to give that to you, but I want to tell you a little introduction first before we get to the actual stuffed toys. I learned about toy making really in my father and mother's factory. The name was R&R Toy in Penargil. I went to work there after I got out of college. They had some hard times. They were kind of getting squeezed by the imports from Japan and also the cost of some items, and they had a series of bad lucks and they eventually went into bankruptcy. But after bankruptcy, I was free to start my own business, which is what I try to do. Grandma Susie had gotten a job at Valley Youth House, so she was bringing in $300 a week income, which at the time was fine. It paid our bills. And I decided to start going on the road and start trying to sell toys. I did this not with my own toy factory, but with contractors in New York. So I would go to small distributors, see if they needed any toys. They'd give me orders for 10 and 20 dozen. And I'd go home, I'd make the item, I'd come back, deliver it a week or two later, and get paid. This was all leading up to larger orders. When I decided I was ready for the big time, I started enlarging my sales area from Chicago to North Carolina. And on my first trip to Chicago, I visited a friend of my dad's. A lot of the stuff I'm going to tell you relates to my dad, Sam. I got to Chicago and I visited one of his big clients, Division Sales, run by his friend Morty Marks. And when I got to the factory, Morty welcomed me in, and he asked me how things were with my dad, my mom, and he also said how I was running my business now that my dad was bankrupt. I explained I was using contractors, and I had control of my cost, and I would like to try to make something for him if he had something. He says he has. He showed me a little bear, about an 8-inch bear, and he said, "Could you make this larger?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "What's the cost going to be?" I said, "Well, I'm not sure. Let me take it home." He said, "Great idea." I took it home with me that night. I drove back, got in around 3 o'clock in the morning. I took it to the factory the next day. I gave it to my designer, Kenny, who made a larger bear, similar type, that Morty asked for. He wanted a 20-inch bear in a bag with a header and a music box inside. Well, that's easy to do. It just took me time to get it to him. Next week, I tells Grandma Susie I'm leaving again. I get on the road. I drive to Chicago, and I show Morty his bear. He liked it. He said, "How much is the cost?" I said, "The cost is going to be $3.25. He said, "Artie, it's too much for me. I can only pay $3. I said, $3? I'll only make 8 cents a bear for $3. He said, "Well, here's the problem. There's a new store in town. They're called dollar stores. And these dollar stores are buying an awful lot of goods now that the chain stores are going bankrupt. But if you give me this guy at $3, I'll give you a container load, and I'll pick up the container whenever it's done in your factory." I said, "Well, I got to think about it." Of course, I called Sam and Ruth. I discussed it with them. They said, "Well, you know, $3 is tight, but you got to make a decision whether you want to work on 8 cents or not," because that's all I was making at the time, 8 cents a toy. So I decided to take the order, even though I knew it was a very, very tight order, mostly because I hadn't had any orders for 6,000 bears, which is what Morty's order was about, a container load, which is 500 dozen. So I made the first 500 dozen. I went to New York. He picked it up from me on a Friday. We loaded the truck. On Monday, he got it in. Tuesday, I had a check in my hands for $18,000, which is exactly what Morty promised me. He promised he'd pay overnight. So that was exciting. He got the order. I'm glad he got the goods. And I kind of went around my normal business day, calling other customers and stuff. And on Thursday, I get a call from Morty. And my secretary says it's Morty Marks, Division Sales. "Oh, I said, okay. He said, hi, Artie. Hi, Morty. You know that order you gave me? Well, it turns out I sold it overnight. So we're actually in 2 or 3 days. And so I want to give you an order for 40 more containers of that same beer. Wow, I couldn't believe my ears. 40 containers. Now, even though I was only making 10 cents a container, I knew that was still a big deal. The following, I went back to Pennsylvania. The next day, after I got back, I went to New York to start getting my supplies of plush and eyes and noses and bags. And I go to for my music box at Harry Fishbein's place, the Swiss Tone. Harry said, when I asked him, I told him I need 250,000 music boxes. Harry said, sorry, Artie, I only have 12,000 pieces. I said, oh my God, 12,000 pieces, that's only enough for 2 truckloads. He says, well, let's come to Atlanta with me. There's a guy in Atlanta that has 8,000 more, or maybe 30,000 more musicals. We'll try to get him. We flew to Atlanta the next day, and we go to this company called, forgot the name, but we go to this company in northern Atlanta. He goes in, he says, stay in front, I'll go to see the boss. He goes to the boss, he comes back, half hour later, says, Artie, he has most of the 30,000 music boxes that I sold him last year, and he's willing to give those to you at half price. That means I'll give them to you at 60 cents instead of 75 cents. I said, great. That means my first 30,000 toys, instead of making 8 cents a toy, I'm going to make 40 cents a toy. 8 and 33 is 41 cents. And that started me on my big order. I eventually got all the music boxes in. I shipped all the goods out. And when I ended up he also says he had 77,000 yards of plush. 70,000 yards of plush divided by 4 yards per dozen means that I could give him 19,000 dozen, which is very close to the 20,000 dozen he ordered. So that got me into the big leagues. I started producing. I got them all done within the next 6 months, and I paid Harry Fishbein back his $150,000 loan. Morty paid me his $250,000 for his toys, and that order was the first big order. And I got a lot of other big orders afterwards, but this was the best one, the one I fought for and got after this, at the beginning of my life, my toy. Okay, thanks.